This is Katie Nelson. I'm also known as Katie the Creative Lady online. You can find me at my website, katiethecreativelady.com, and there are also links on the top of my website page to all my social media channels. I'm really excited today to talk to you about how to use digital stamps and brushes in Photoshop Elements. This is a question that I have gotten a lot, is how to use these elements, and I'm really excited to show you some of my tips and tricks. I'm going to use my new Mentally Healthy collection and use the stamps from this collection to show you some ideas. I'm also going to do just a little bit of a quick digital unboxing of the collection because I think it's fun to see the pieces individually and to hear from the designer what the inspiration was on a lot of these pieces. So we'll start off with the pocket cards, and pocket cards are really great if you use pocket pages where they have the little separate sections for different cards and photos, or you can use them on traditional layouts. You can use them, of course, for digital layouts or print them out for hybrid pages. You can also print these out as fun notes to put in somebody's lunchbox or even to make a greeting card. I have two types of cards that I include. One that I call filler cards, where the design is all filled in for you and it's something that you can use as almost like an illustration on your page. Lots of positive messages in this set. That's what it's all about. Fun, happy colors and lots of good messages. The reminder card was my favorite, so I included that in two colors and threw that extra one in as a bonus. So you get a little extra card in this one. The filler cards come in two sizes. They are 3x4 or 6x4, depending on what type of page you are creating. And so I like having that option as well. Journaling cards are where there's enough space for you to add a lot of your own text. And in this case, this kit, the one on the bottom right with the stripes, the paint stroke stripes, ended up working as either a journaling card or a filler card. You can add type right on top of that, or you can use it as is. So that was kind of a fun little design there. Again, lots of space for your stories. The paper pack ended up being one of my favorites. I think I say that every time, but I just love the colors and the mix of patterns here. Digital papers are great for your digital scrapbooking projects. You can also print them out for hybrid projects. And I love digital papers because you can use them over and over again. You don't have to run to the store every time you need a piece of paper. Again, an up-close look at some of the papers. That gradient just doesn't show its beauty on the preview. I wanted you to be able to see the whole thing. And this cute floral. Another cute floral and a little cross-hatch type of plaid. And a little chevron zigzag. And the clouds are fun. Lots of different colors in there. The suns, the little sunshine, that's one of my favorites. And mini polkas and cute little happy face dots. Those are a lot of fun to use too. I'm a sucker for a good gingham. I just love them. And these stars have been something I've already used multiple times. I always design a template set in each of my collections. And of course, they can be used for more than just the topic at hand. I love templates because they take the guesswork out of layouts. It's like using a map that somebody has already designed for you. And I've been doing this for a long time. So I know what works and what doesn't on a scrapbook layout. And so I can save you a lot of hassle there. I've also added my favorite shadowing. It's subtle, but still very nice. And these, of course, can be used over and over again. I always include 4 single-page templates, and then I do 4 double-page templates, which is a nice way for you to see how they can be combined. Or some people like to scrap in double-page templates if they're creating a photo book. Okay, and the stamps and brushes, this is what we're going to be focusing a lot on today. Stamps and brushes are really fun because you can add them to photos or to journaling cards or papers. There's so many different things you can do with them. And if you're not familiar with them, you may not realize how useful they are. They're great, of course, for hybrid projects like cards and tons of digital applications. The nice thing is with these, you can change sizes, change colors, you can use them over and over. And my stamp and brush sets are always designed at the same time as my journaling and filler cards, and they use a lot of the same ingredients, you will see. But it's nice because it just gives you so much more flexibility. Okay, stamps versus brushes. You may not know the difference. You may not understand how they're classified that way. A digital stamp is really just a PNG file. It's something that is a digital file that has a transparent background. And it's nice with that transparent background because that gives you a lot of options. The brushes come in an ABR file, and I'll be talking about those as well. Right now, I just want to kind of tell you some of the differences. I don't want you to worry about having to understand everything right now. I'm going to go through all of this. But with PNG stamps, you get the individual digital PNG file for each design. There's a transparent background. It works on top of photos or papers. You can recolor them. You can resize them. They can also be used as a masking tool, and there are a lot of customization options. If you look at that little image of the 2 rows of emotion faces, emoticons, the top one was done with a PNG file stamp. The bottom one was done with a brush stamp. And those were with no alterations, so they look the same. Okay, so don't worry too much about, oh, one's going to have a lot different look. But there are different things you can do with each file. So the ABR brush files, they need to be installed in Photoshop Elements. I'll go over that again. There's a group of ABR files that are all saved as one brush file, although you can access each brush individually. They also have a transparent background. They also work on top of photos or papers. They can also be easily recolored, easily resized. It's nice to be able to find the set of images all together when they're loaded as brushes. And there are customization options through brush settings. There is a little fun trick with brush files that it's almost like rubber stamping, and it can be really quick if you're using multiple images. Okay, so let's work on the PNG stamps first. I'm going to show you how to work with those files. So one thing I love to do is I love to add PNG stamps on top of my photos. So here's one stamp from this set, and there's a fun photo from the beach several years ago. Okay, so what I've done is I open it up in my Photoshop Elements program, and I'm using Photoshop Elements 2021, but the process is going to be very similar for earlier versions of Photoshop Elements. Okay, I've got my photo, and I'm going to drag that PNG file right on top of it and resize it as I want. It's just a simple layer added with that file. And you can see that it acts as its own layer. You can resize it or move it around as you want, but it acts as its own layer. There I'm going to use the top menu and fill it with a solid color. I'm just going to use white on this one, but you could use the color picker and pick something else. Then I'm going to create that as a clipping mask, and now it's like I have a white stamp on top of that photo. You can see with the clear background, it shows the photo still through. Be sure you don't just save it over your old file. Give it a new name so that you're not changing your original photo, and save it as a JPEG file. I always pick the largest quality setting. So I'll go up to 12. And that is a fun photo that you could use on social media, on a layout, print out, and frame. Lots of great options for that one. And there are a lot of different things you can do with stamps. They're very versatile. You will get a lot of creative ideas as you start looking at these elements in a whole different way to realize that they can really be used in many different ways. And I love the finished product. Turned out really fun. Okay, this is also a great way to use empty space in a photo. I took that photo of my son with some CDs and added one of the stamps. A great photo of my husband on top of a rock in his Razor or utility terrain vehicle, all-terrain vehicle. And those stamps add a lot of personality to these photos. You can also adjust the colors and the opacity for different looks on these stamps. This is all the same stamp with different looks. I'm going to show you a little bit of how I did that. So the stamp is a different layer. You need to make sure that's selected. And again, you can fill it with color. You can choose different color from the color picker, create a clipping mask. You have all sorts of different looks. You can get rid of that. You can use some of the options up in the top. If you look at the opacity slider, if you adjust that down, then you can get a very faint look. You can adjust it to make it look almost more like it blends with the photo. So that's another trick I like to do. Again, be sure you save it. Save it as a separate file. Don't write over your original photo. You can put that opacity back, and there are other options. There are blending modes in Photoshop Elements. So if you click on that little arrow next to that and choose instead of normal, you can choose different things like soft light. There's a hard screen. There's all sorts of different menu options. And you just kind of have to play around with them to see what you like. I also love to use the gradient tool. Instead of filling it with solid color, you can do what's called a gradient fill. You can choose a black and white gradient, and what you're going to do is you're just going to hit OK, and you're going to treat it like that solid color that you did earlier. You're going to clip it, use that clipping mask. And you can see that it's not a solid white, but it's kind of using the gradient. Now you play around with different ones. Some of them won't work. Some of them might be more interesting than others. And you can even just play around with color combinations on it. That one was a radial, and that just didn't really look as good as the linear. So don't be afraid to push the buttons and play. That really is a lot of the fun of this program, and it's how I learned this program. You just have to play around a little bit and not be scared of it. Okay, you can also use a stamp as a masking tool. I took this same stamp and I'm going to use my gradient paper. And what I'm doing here is I've got the stamp open in Photoshop Elements. I'm going to put it on a new canvas. There's lots of different ways you can do this, but you don't have to always use the scrapbooking size. You could use a photo size and pick different shapes that you want to put it on. So there's a 6x4. I'll drag that stamp on there and I'll make it a little bigger. This is kind of like making my own filler card. You can get really creative once you understand how to use these different pieces. Then I'll take the gradient paper and I'll put it in there. I like to put it under the stamp first because I can kind of see how it's going to fill. I can look at where the different colors of the gradient are and make sure I like that. Once I've got that in place, I'll move it up over on the side. I'll make sure it's on top. Again, I'll create the clipping mask, and then it's filled with a really nice gradient look of that paper. So that means that you just used that stamp as a masking tool. That's the technical term for it. Be sure you're saving the file, of course, as something else. And I think that turned out really nice. I also love to add these digital stamps to my layouts or journaling cards. So I had this layout that I worked on for my daughter, and I usually pick my photos first when I'm creating a layout, and then I add the journaling cards. Now, this is also using a template from my set. And if you don't know how to do that, I have a different video on that. So be sure to look for that. I can also link it in the comments. I could have left that journaling card, that filler card as is, but I decided to try a stamp on it. And I think that turned out fun. I like that it kind of ties in some of the black from those two photos on either side of it. And it just added a little finishing touch. So don't be afraid to try different combinations. You can be creative with these. So stamps versus brushes. We've talked about what stamps are, and you should understand very well how to use a PNG file as a stamp. Now, when we talk about the ABR brush files, you can look, if you look at that screen right next to the preview, there's the brush file, and that contains all of the brushes. Okay, ABR brush files need to be installed. There are a group of files together, but you can access each brush individually, and they work a lot like stamps in that they have a transparent background that can be recolored and resized, and you can do some really fun tricks when you're using multiple images from the stamps. To install the brush files, you're going to need to know the location of the folder where the brush is located. So if you bought my Mentally Healthy stamp and brush file, you would want to know where that got downloaded to. Or if you were looking through an older set that you had purchased, you just would want to know where that was stored. Then you're going to want to decide if you're going to want to temporarily load brushes to save memory or install them for long-term or repeated use. You'll see how I do both, and you can decide. The temporary installation means that you will have to reinstall the brushes again if you change brush sets while working or you restart the Photoshop Elements program. I'm going to show you how that works. So on your side toolbar, make sure you have the brush selected. Then you go down to the brush tool below, and this is called the hamburger icon, the little lines. You click on that, and you're going to go ahead and hit Load Brushes. Now, just make sure you know where it was downloaded. I'm showing you on mine. I had it in my downloads. Then you double click on that file, and you'll select Open, and that will load the brushes. Now you can see they're right there in with the default brushes. Easy to access. Okay, if you want to install the brush files where they're always there in your program, there's another way to do that. Now, I just want to give you a couple of things to think about with that. Installing certain brushes is definitely wise if they're ones you're going to use over and over again. This can be particularly true with artsy kind of brushes where you're using them for textures or different artistic effects on your layouts. If you're using something more just temporary, something that might be more with a topic, then you will just want to use the previous method I showed you. Because too many installed brush sets can cause your program to slow down. Now that won't happen with just a few, but if you have a lot, it definitely will. All right, if you have where your brush set is, you're going to want to copy that ABR file. You're going to still keep that one with the original set, so you always have that as a backup. But put this one just somewhere where you can easily access it, like your downloads file. Then I'm using the Finder. I'm on a Mac. If you're in Windows, you would use the Windows Explorer tool, and you may have to make some of your hidden files visible. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my applications, find my program, find the presets file, find the brushes file. Then I will take that copy of the brush file and I'll just simply drag it over to install it. Now, if you have questions on how to do this on a Windows machine, I apologize that I'm on a Mac and I don't have a way to record on Windows. You may have to do a little Googling, but it is quite similar to what I just did, that you'll just have to use the Windows Explorer tool and make sure that you can get to your program application files as well and install that. I'll show you a few tricks with some stamping or with some brushes. I think of it as stamping and you'll see why here in a minute. I'm going to select that brush tool on the side, go down and pick the installed brush or the loaded brush that I want. And in this case, I'm going to use one of the clouds I have. I have 2 different clouds in this set. I am going to use white. You can use your color picker and find it. If you also happen to know the hex code for it, you can type that in. And then once that's selected, you can see that you'll have that shape all loaded and ready to put on the page. Again, it's just kind of like a stamp, like a rubber stamp. And you can see how quick it is if I want to use multiples. A lot easier than trying to always drag over the PNG file for everything. This gets fun because you can change the size. You can go from really small to really big. And you're still using the same shape, but in a different size. So a lot of possibilities with this. And you can see how easy it is to just kind of randomize and create your own little scene there with the brushes. You can go big if you want. And go really little. Okay, you'll want to be sure that you are saving and save over, don't save over the original file, save to a different place, which is what I did here. Now with this pink paper from the set, I don't want to use the clouds again, but I've got that brush set loaded and I'm going to pick my color. So I'm going to use black on this one, which happens to be all zeros if you want to know. And I'm going to use this Good Vibes. You can see when you hover over it, you'll see the name of the brush. And you just put it right there on the paper. Just using your cursor is all you're doing. You can fill with different colors, try different looks. And you can see how easy it is to switch back and forth between other things, other options. It's a very fast way to try a lot of creativity. Try lowering the opacity. This is similar to what we did with the PNG files. There are several different options to use. Then you can also try different modes, like instead of using normal, you might use soft light here. Or a hard mix. You just will get a lot of different looks. A color burn. Let's try that one. Some stamps will show more of a variation than others if you have a larger stamp or it's got different areas. Okay, if you go into the brush settings, there are different sliders to play around with. And again, this might not be the best stamp to illustrate those on, but they do give you different looks. And it's worth playing around with those. You're not going to break anything. You can always undo anything you try by going up to the top menu and hitting Edit Undo. Or on a Mac, it's Command Z. I believe on a Windows, it's Control Z. That's your best friend when you're playing around. You can always undo. Lots of different things to try. So you can see some of my tricks. I kept going and just tried a lot of different options. So you should be proud of yourself. Think of how much you've just learned about stamps and brushes. If there's a part that you wonder about, go back and rewind it a little bit and watch it. Installing brushes and loading brushes can feel intimidating the first few times. And honestly, it was something I had to look up every time for quite a while until it became second nature. So don't be too hard on yourself if that's something new to you, but also be willing to try out some different combinations and play around. You'll get to know your program a lot better, and it's a lot of fun. I have a special discount to thank you for watching this whole tutorial. All of my stamp and brush sets can be 15% off for you if you use the code STAMP tutorial in all caps. I'll show you how to do that real quick. If you go to my site, click on shop, and it will take you to my shop. You can see I have a little menu across the top that will take you to different categories of the shop. I have a lot of stamps and brushes from all my different collections. So however many you decide to choose, this coupon isn't limited to just one. Go ahead and add that to your cart. However many you add to your cart, once you're done, you go to your cart, and as you're getting ready to check out, there is just a little area for you to enter your discount code. Just be sure to type in Stamp Tutorial in all caps, and then you'll hit apply, and that will get the discount for you. I hope that you will like this YouTube video. That helps a lot with the algorithm. And be sure to share it with some friends, because I would love more people to find out how to use these fun items. And follow me and subscribe to be sure to see when I have new videos. Thanks so much, and I appreciate you coming here to watch my tutorial on using stamps and brushes in Photoshop Elements.